Hey guys, I am here with an ARC review today of a book that I have been waiting for and waiting for and waiting for, and the moment is finally here when I get to talk to you about it. And on the one hand, I was a little bit worried about that, right? You know, when you are anticipating a book so much and then when you read it, there's a really big chance that it's not going to meet your expectations, because at a certain point you've like anticipated it so hard that it just like can't, right? I am here to tell you that this book met my expectations. I loved it so much, and we're gonna talk about it. So the book in question is Knockout by Sarah MacLean. This is the third book in her Hell's Bells series. I have reviewed the first two books in the series. So if you are looking to go and see what the series is about without being spoiled for this third book, do go watch my review of the first one, which I will link up above. Click on that, hear what the story is about, and read it, because I love Sarah MacLean. I think that she is the queen of historical romances. I basically don't read this genre anymore except for her, because I love her so much. Because this is the third book in a series, just necessarily there has to be a few spoilers for the first two books in the series. They are all, their own couple, but it is a story that is building off of each other, so you do need to read these in order. So at the end of the first book in this series, which was called Bombshell, I am almost 100% certain I said in that video, I was like, I need the next book to be about Imogen. And it wasn't, it was about Adelaide, but that's okay. The third book is finally Imogen's book. If you have kind of forgotten what this series was about, the Hell's Bells are a group of women who in a normal society function would be considered the outcasts. They're wallflowers, they're just too much or too little, they're not really fitting into society's expectations. So the four women at the heart of the Bells operation are the Duchess of Trebiscan, who hasn't had a book yet, Cecily, who is the sister of another character in the Scandals and Scoundrels series. There's also Adelaide, who was the person book 2 was about. Cecily was book 1, and then there's Imogen, who gets book 3. The Duchess of Trebiscan is gonna get book 4, and they give you a brief teaser at the end of this book about the kind of plot of that one, and oh my god, did that come out of nowhere for me. I cannot wait to see what happens. In the dynamic here, Cecily is the vivacious, bombshell one of the team. She is the one who is an outcast in perfect London society because she's just too much, showing, whatever. She just doesn't fit in with the demure, ladylike sensibilities of the ton. And Adelaide is their bookish one with some surprise bite. You found out in the second one that she was the daughter of a notorious gang lord in London. And then Imogen is also a little bit nerdy. She is their chemist, but she is the kind of nerdy in which she likes to make things go boom. She makes things explode for the Hell's Bells, literally, and I've just been waiting and waiting and waiting for her to have a book. In a way, this book was kind of being set up in anticipation as well. The lead into this one is that over the first and second books, the first one was really establishing the operation of the Bells, how they were not only saving aristocratic women from marriages to bad men, but they were also doing things in the East End of London, helping women see doctors, helping women who are in abusive relationships who are not aristocratic get out of them, that kind of stuff. And that was kind of the setup. And then in the second book is when you really start to see the scope of that, particularly with Adelaide's, connection to a gang lord in the East End of London. And in these first two books, they have helped powerful men get arrested by handing over the fruits of their investigation to a chief inspector of Scotland Yard named Thomas Peck. And in particular, the person who is normally giving Thomas Peck these reports and kind of just teasing him the whole time about why couldn't you figure this out, or, blah, 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 at one point actually exploding a jail cell in Scotland Yard in the first book, is Imogen. So in the first 2 books, they've had a few scenes together where they've been riffing off each other and just clearly having like the start to a beautiful, beautiful relationship that we finally get to see come to fruition in book 3. The reason that Thomas Peck factors so largely into the plot of book 3 is for a couple of reasons. One is that because the Bells have given him these cases, he's reached a really high profile in Scotland Yard. And 2, he's on the case of these bombings that are happening. They aren't killing anybody, but they are destroying businesses in the East End. And he doesn't know at this time that these businesses are businesses owned by the Bells and friends of the Bells that are trying to help women throughout London escaping the clutches and power of this patriarchal society. Basically what's happened is friends of the men who the Bells have already taken down have decided that their work needs to be stopped at whatever cost, hence the bombings. Naturally, Imogen is kind of leading this search for the Bells, and she is their chemist and makes explosions herself. And so she's the one basically trying to untangle who is doing these bombings, how they're doing it, and the roots are going to go really, really far up into these web of people that connect Imogen and Thomas. The first 2 books have really done, I think, a good job of establishing that Thomas Peck, he is just annoyingly fascinated by Imogen. He realizes that she is caught up in something that he doesn't know what's really going on there, and that really bothers him because his whole identity is wrapped up in being a good, not only good, but great Scotland Yard inspector and helping people and bringing justice to those who require it. And so Imogen is this puzzle. He doesn't quite understand who the hell's Bells are, what their mission is, you know, if they're like enemy or friend. And at the same time, he's fascinated by Imogen herself, this very petite, curvy woman who tends to be around when things go boom. And he's annoyed with himself by how fascinated and kind of obsessed with her he is, because there's just so many secrets around her that he wants to untangle, and they go right to just her heart as well. Imogen is just used to being too much for everyone. She's too much for her brother, who basically doesn't pay any attention to her because she's not a normal society lady. Even among her friends, especially now that a couple of them have coupled off, she kind of feels like she's the like amusing like side friend, right? The friend who everybody goes, oh, Imogen, cute. But like don't really see her for the genius and the deeper person that she is. She loves her friends. She knows that she is loved by them. But she has just lived her entire life thinking there's just parts of her that are just too much. And she is kind of dumbfounded that these pieces of her that she thinks people either just kind of try to accept or can't really accept are the parts of her that are just fascinating to Thomas. And he's also obviously a very attractive man, because this is a romance novel and we do attractive men all the time here. And so she is just scientifically, of course, trying to understand through scientific experiments that are touching and kissing what is going on between her and Thomas, and if his affection for her can truly be real or if it is just like a morbid fascination. Let's be honest, I also just love that things go boom in this novel. I don't like a lot of historical romances because I think they really box women into very particular roles, except for in extreme cases or instances. And what has been incredible about the Hell's Bells series in particular is how these women in their own ways escape those boxes set for them by this society. And Imogen is no exception. You know, she's really, really smart. She is a great chemist. She understands the science of liquids and solids and all that like really brainy stuff. And then she just really, really, really also likes to make things go boom. And I just, as a character from the first book, I have loved her, and I loved her even more when she got her own story. The plot on this one is a mystery, and so if I get too deeply into the like bends and weaves of it, you might end up getting spoiled, and that is not at all what I want. What I will tell you is that basically what happens is that Imogen and her friends realize that there are high-powered aristocrats who are responsible for the bombings, and they have to figure out who. And so Imogen decides that she's going to tell her brother that she's finally going to conform and go search for a husband. And so she kind of goes on a fake husband hunt to try to have these balls happening and stuff where they can find out who these aristocrats are. Thomas gets involved in the situation because at one point Imogen goes missing, and he is contacted by the Home Secretary, who is good friends with Imogen's brother, who is an earl, to go find her. He finds her in like 30 seconds, and this is when Imogen decides she's actually going to go home under her own steam to begin this husband hunting situation. And Thomas goes to Imogen's brother and was like, hey, I think she needs a protector, and that protector should be me. And of course, this entire time, Thomas is just trying to tell himself that he's doing it because he's trying to unravel this mystery of the bombing and how the Bells are involved. But like, obviously, he's also just really obsessed with Imogen and wants to be as close to her as possible. Despite the fact that there is like a mystery to unravel in this book, I would say that it's a little bit lighter on the plot. Like the whole kind of reveals in the end, there's not a lot of layers to them, but I didn't really care. For me, this really wasn't a plot book. It was a relationship book about Imogen and Tommy coming together as two people in just a way that felt cute and beautiful and natural and funny and lovely. And just the two of them thinking certain things about themselves and then kind of learning to love themselves through the other person's eyes. It was really, really amazing, and things went boom in multiple ways, and I enjoyed it. In terms of where this one ranks in the rest of the series, I was realizing when I went to get into reading this one that I actually had very little recollection of the plot of the second book in the series, which was Heartbreaker, Adelaide's book, and I had to go back and kind of like remember what had happened there. Whereas I had very firm memories of what happened in the first book in this series. And so that for me was already a sign that, you know, the second book was not as good as the first book. And indeed, on Goodreads, I rated the first book 5, and I rated this book, the second book, 4. I rated this book 5 stars again because when I finished it, I was just like, I have no notes. It's amazing that I've talked as long as I have in this review. It's all been gushing, I'm aware. I'm running out of things to say. I'm repeating myself. But that's just how I feel. I have no notes. I really enjoyed it. And I'm sure if I wanted to get technical about it, I could say, well, the plot wasn't blah, blah, blah. But I just so enjoyed this book. It was just like a warm hug with a character who I've been deeply anticipating their story, and it just met my expectations. And that, honestly, 5 stars. That's hard to do. No notes. Sarah MacLean is amazing. Like I said at the beginning, there is a brief epilogue at the end of this book that tells you where the plot of the 4th book, and I assume final because there's just 4 major Bells books in this series, is going to go. It was not the direction that I thought the Duchess's story was going to go at all. And let me tell you, I am really excited for how this story is going to go and how the series is going to wrap up. So you can bet your bottom dollar that you will see me the second I get that arc and can tell you guys about it. So fingers crossed that it ends on the high notes the rest of the series has hit. Thanks, guys. Bye.